Taiwan. I'm Jaime Ocon with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan and the United States have held a first round of tariff talks. That's according to Taiwan's cabinet. Taiwan is hoping to avoid a potential 32% tariff on its goods by the Trump administration. The two sides discussed other economic and trade issues in a video call. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te previously said he received a positive response from Washington on his plan to boost procurement and investment in the United States. Japan says that peace in the Taiwan Strait is not only important for the country's security, but is also a cornerstone of global security. Those comments come from Tokyo's annual Diplomatic Blue Book, which looks at how Japan will engage with countries in the region to promote security. One section of the report touches on China's recent large-scale military drills, which Japan labels as coercive and intimidating maneuvers. The report also says Japan should work more with the U.S. to increase defense spending and to take more active measures to prevent a conflict in the region. To learn more about how Japan is viewing its security environment, I spoke to Robert Ward. He's the Director of Geoeconomics and Strategy at the International Institute for Strategic Studies based in London. When we look at how Japan is talking about security around Taiwan, has that approach changed at all?
If you look at, for example, the G7 communique after the Hiroshima summit in 2023, they also talk about the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and the importance of that for the international community. And why that's important for Japan is because Japan wants the issue to be seen as a global issue. And why that's important is because Japan wants lots of other countries also to be interested in preserving the status quo, so preserving stability in the region. So this is part of Japan's attempt to create strategic complexity in the region for China, but also to sort of cross-brace, if you like, its own security interests and that of the US in instabilities.
Let's say that there was a conflict around Taiwan. How would Japan be affected?
If there was a contingency in Taiwan, Japan would be one of the major geopolitical losers, probably globally, obviously, apart from Taiwan. Japan is sits so close to Taiwan, Yonaguni Island, the westernmost island of Japan, sits 100 kilometers or so away from Taiwan. You can see Taiwan from Japanese territory on a clear day. So really, really important for Japan, given the volatility coming from the US at the moment. The task here has perhaps got a bit more difficult for Japan. So Japan's trying to increase its agency within its security treaty relationship with the US to show that it's pulling its weight, to show that it's spending more money on defense and so on. So that is the core of Japan's strategic posture on Taiwan. But then it's seeking to supplement this core with trying to get other countries with Indo-Pacific interests interested in the region and interested in this issue. So it's quite ambitious.
We recently saw the U.S. Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, visit Japan, and he's really pushing for countries to spend more on their defense. How do you think relations between the United States and Japan will change under this new Trump administration?
So I think one important thing to remember is Japan has always been under pressure from the US to spend more on defense, whether it's President Nixon, whether it's President Carter, Reagan, and so on. This has been a steady thing. And since 2022, when Japan really did sort of produce an about turn in its defense policy, Japan has been, I think, doing quite a lot to make good on what the US has been asking it to do. Not just because the US wants it to spend more, by the way, but also because Japan itself recognizes that its role in preserving stability in the region has also changed. Secretary Hegseth's visit to Japan, that was also, I think, went quite well. Hegseth used some language about lethality and so on that some in Tokyo may have found a little bit bracing, but overall I think the direction was good.
That was Robert Ward from the International Institute for Strategic Studies based in London. Former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is now back in his private home after being removed from office. Hundreds of supporters were seen waiting and cheering for him outside his home. Last week, South Korea's Constitutional Court upheld Yoon's impeachment, which put an end to 4 months of constitutional turmoil after an attempt to impose martial law in December. Security officials say that as many as 50 personnel will be deployed to guard Yoon and his wife, who are entitled to protection for at least 5 years. After months of heated debate, New Zealand lawmakers have voted down a controversial bill that sought to redefine the country's founding treaty. The lawmakers sided with more than 200,000 people who lodged formal objections to the proposal. The decision reaffirms support for the country's Indigenous Maori rights. Lauren Padmore reports.
The ayes are 11, the noes are 112. The motion is lost.
New Zealand's parliament overwhelmingly rejecting a contentious bill that triggered the largest protest and public response in the country's history. Introduced by the right-wing ACT Party, a member of the ruling coalition, the bill sought to redefine New Zealand's founding agreement, signed in the 19th century between the Indigenous Maori peoples and the British Crown. It was meant to establish British law in the country while recognising Maori land rights. But the Act argued the way it's been interpreted has given Maori preferential treatment in society.
Some critics say that the debate is divisive. Well, I say it has revealed the division. I say it's revealed a sizable minority of New Zealanders who oppose equal rights, liberal democracy and treating each person with the same basic dignity.
ACT says their proposed bill would have evened the playing field, redefining the role of the founding treaty and emphasising the rights of all New Zealanders. But few agreed with them, and the bill faced opposition from the start, both from within Parliament and on the streets. For the Maori, the proposed bill was a harsh reminder of historic injustice. Now numbering some 900,000, the Indigenous group makes up 17% of the country's population. They've been here since the 13th century, and in their version of the founding treaty, called Te Tiriti, the Maori have the right to self-governance, to own their own land and use their natural resources, agreements that were repeatedly ignored by the Crown. In 1975, the treaty was enshrined into law and a tribunal was established to settle disputes. Treaty advocates say there wasn't a need to amend the law.
And for decades now, the principles of the treaty has been the way that decision makers have been required through law to honour Te Tiriti. And I've spent 20 years as a lawyer doing cases related to that. The bill could have rolled back decades of progress.
The bill's rejection in Parliament doesn't instantly smooth over long-standing social divisions, with many parliamentarians reminded of the country's deep social wounds by the public outcry, particularly from New Zealand's Indigenous peoples, also called iwi.
I felt so much shame and so much sadness in many of those submissions as we had iwi come and talk to us, some so angry they were shaking. They couldn't even articulate the trauma that this whole process has rehashed.
With the threat of ACT's bill now passed, many here see this as an opportunity to reaffirm the treaty's significance and the rights it gave to Māori, rights they fear could still be taken away from them. Ryan Wu and Lauren Padmore for TaiwanPlus.
As the global appetite for seafood grows, industrial fishing fleets are venturing further into remote waters. A new report by the Outlaw Ocean Project shows how those fleets are damaging a uniquely delicate ecosystem in the Indian Ocean, threatening to worsen the climate crisis, and Taiwan's fishers are part of the problem. Jonathan Kaplan reports.
Far off the northeast coast of Madagascar lies the Saya de Mala Bank. It rises from the deep sea floor to shallow depths, creating a unique ecosystem of marine life in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
It's distinctly shallow. This is the largest plateau in the world in terms of ocean plateaus. And in some places it's as shallow as 10 meters. What that means is that sunlight can reach the floor. So it's almost like a beachfront flush with sunlight and lots of creatures. That's the Saya de Mala.
The seagrass that grows here is one of the world's most effective carbon sinks. The plant captures carbon up to 30 times faster than terrestrial forests, and the Saya de Mala is the world's largest known seagrass field, for now. Its days may be numbered. For the past decade, industrial fishing fleets chasing diminishing fish stocks have been plying the bank's rich waters, pulling up tons of sea life and mowing down the sea floor.
This is a really destructive form of fishing, very common in this area. It's destructive because it's indiscriminate. So it's grabbing everything in its path. And that means you're catching lots of bycatch or species that you weren't intending to consume or sell. Turtles, birds, sharks, whales, what have you. Bottom trawling in particular is destructive because it's on the bottom of the ocean. It's dragging a net across the seafloor, which is essentially like putting a cable between two Humvees and driving across the Amazon and sort of knocking down everything in your path.
The trawlers, mainly from Sri Lanka and Thailand, are delivering crushing blows to this delicate ecosystem. The bank lies in mostly international waters in the Indian Ocean, administered by the small island nation of Mauritius, 900 kilometers to the south, which cannot police this vast stretch of ocean the size of Switzerland. It makes the Saya de Mala an attractive target. But it's not just the trawlers gobbling up everything in sight.
So the Taiwanese fleet that's there are Taiwanese tuna longliners primarily. They're largely on the outskirts of the Saya de Mala where the water gets deeper, so the edges of the plateau where tuna are more likely to be found. Tuna, as you know, is a very high-priced target because a lot of types of tuna are already collapsed. They've disappeared in many other places in the world. And the Saya de Mala is a place where there's a huge flow of tuna in that area. But because it's so far historically, other fleets haven't gone there, but the Taiwanese are now.
But tuna aren't all that the Taiwanese boats are bringing up.
The Saya de Mala has an unusual concentration of sharks. The attraction for fishers, for fishing fleets of sharks, is their fin. Their fin sells mostly to be used for shark fin soup. And so if you're targeting tuna, you can change your line in a small way and catch both tuna and shark. So it's pretty easy adjustment to make, and you can bump up your revenue. So you're seeing a fair number of sharks being pulled onto Taiwanese vessels as well. And Taiwan, Hong Kong, China are the biggest markets for these fins.
The extent to which Taiwan's tuna fleets are harvesting shark fins isn't fully known. What is known is that shark populations are under increasing pressure globally, with many species threatened. And while human beings may have an aversion to sharks, they fill a critical niche in the health of the ocean.
They're the police of the sort of food triangle, and they keep everything in check because they're apex predators and they eat everything below them. And so when they're gone, certain players below them can emerge to fill the void and then sort of knock everything out of whack. And you can see very rapid collapse of other kinds of species because things get out of balance. You lose the top apex predator and the entire habitat can fall apart.
Taiwan has banned shark finning, which usually involves slicing the fins off live fish before dumping them overboard to a slow, helpless death. The practice remains profitable enough to make the occasional surprise port inspection worth the risk. And buying or selling the fins is legal. Restaurants openly advertise shark fin, popular in part because its high price carries prestige. Sharks are just one variable in a complex equation. Their removal hastens a collapse. Somewhere along the chain, a massive store of carbon is released from a vast field of dead seagrass. Without a cultural shift or effective regulation, human appetites will continue to leave lasting scars on the biosphere, perhaps irreversibly. Patrick Chen and Jonathan Kaplan for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Jaime Ocon. Take care. We'll see you next time.